He ruined me. 2 years later, he begged to make it right. I believed him. Now, my business is dead, my family shattered, second chances. He just wanted a second shot at my destruction. This eviction notice, it's not even on good paper. Flimsy, like my life. My hands won't stop shaking. Stop it! Liam's just staring out the window, silent. God, that silence. It's a physical weight crushing me. The morning grind, our coffee shop, our everything. Gone, or good as. And it's my fault. All my fault. Because of him, Julian. The name itself feels like swallowing broken glass. How could I? How could I be so colossally, monumentally stupid? Twice? Sophie. My little Sophie. Thank God she's with Liam's mom this weekend. She doesn't need to see this. Her mother, a complete, utter, self-destructing idiot, about to lose our home, our business, maybe even Liam. All because I listened to a snake. A snake I knew was a snake. I'd felt his fangs before, and I still let him bite me again. What kind of fool does that? College. Seems like another person's life now. Julian Vance. Oh, he was something. That smile. That damn smile could charm the birds from the trees, the cash from your wallet, and it did. Mine. Anyway, he whispered dreams into my ear, big, glittering dreams of a future together. Then, poof. Graduation day, he was gone. Vanished, along with my savings. My emergency fund, the money I'd scrimped and saved for a down payment on a tiny condo, gone. Left me with a maxed out credit card he'd sworn was just for a few textbooks, babe, and a heart so shattered I thought the pieces would never fit back together. It took years. Years of working dead-end jobs, eating instant noodles until I never wanted to see another styrofoam cup again just to crawl out of the debt he'd buried me under. The shame of it. God, the shame. I told no one. Carried it like a stone. Then Liam. Steady, dependable, wonderfully normal Liam. He wasn't flashy. He didn't make grand pronouncements. He just saw me. The real me, under all the carefully constructed defenses. He believed in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. We built a life. A quiet life. A good life. Sophie came along, a tiny miracle of joy, and then the morning grind. Our little coffee shop, it wasn't just a business, it was redemption. It was proof. Proof I was strong, proof I was smart, proof Julian Vance hadn't destroyed me. What a joke. What a pathetic, self-deluding joke I'd been telling myself. 6 months ago. Just 6 short, catastrophic months. He walked back into my life as easily as he'd walked out of it. Strolled into the morning grind on a busy Tuesday looking like he owned the damn world. The cheap knockoff band t-shirts and ripped jeans were gone. Replaced by a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. A Rolex. A Rolex. The nerve of him. But it was his face that got me. That carefully crafted expression of deep, soulful remorse. Said he'd spent years looking for me. Years consumed by guilt. Right? He spun this incredible tale. He'd hit rock bottom after he left. Found therapy, found himself. Now a big shot vice president at some high-flying private equity firm, Phoenix Capital Ventures. Sounded impressive, didn't it? Said his firm was all about ethical investment, about giving back, said the way he treated me was the defining shame of his existence. He just wanted a chance to apologize, to make things right, to prove he was a changed man, changed, like a leopard can change its spots. Why didn't I laugh in his face? Why didn't I call the cops? Liam knew. From the second I told him Julian was back, Liam knew. Ava, no! He'd said that night, his voice quiet but firm. That look in his eyes, that protective, worried look that always made me feel safe. But this time, it just made me feel rebellious. Don't do it. Don't let him anywhere near you, near us. He's a con man, Ava. That's what he does. That's who he is. I should have listened. Every cell in my body now screams it. I should have listened to Liam, but I didn't. That stubborn, foolish pride, that insane little voice in my head whispering, maybe he has changed. Maybe this time will be different. And the morning grind, as much as I loved it, was a struggle. The competition in Portland's coffee scene is brutal. Costs were rising. I dreamed of expanding, of a little empire of cozy neighborhood spots. A dream Julian, with his talk of Phoenix Capital and their interest in unique local businesses, seemed to hold the golden key to. He was so damn smooth, so patient. Became a fixture at the shop, never pushy, just a quiet coffee in the corner, a polite word. An occasional email, saw this article on sustainable sourcing, thought of the morning grind. Or, this local business grant might be perfect for you, Ava. He, even with an almost supernatural sense of timing, happened to be there the day our main grinder died mid-morning rush. Chaos. Absolute chaos. And then Julian, calm as you please, knows a guy. An hour later, grinder fixed, at a friends and family rate. Little hooks, little acts of calculated kindness, each one reeling me in bit by bit. Liam saw it. He tried to warn me again and again. He's grooming you, Ava. Can't you see it? We fought. God, did we fight. I accused him of not supporting my ambition, of not trusting my judgment. He accused me of being blind, of willingly walking back into a trap with my eyes wide open. That wall between us, it wasn't just a crack anymore. It was a chasm. And I was too stubborn, too focused on the glittering prize Julian was dangling to even try and bridge it. Then came the pitch, the big one, Phoenix Capital Ventures. They were impressed by me, by the morning grind. They saw massive growth potential. Julian, as their VP, would personally oversee the investment. He'd be my strategic partner, my mentor. He laid out this incredible vision, multiple locations, a central roastery, maybe even a line of branded merchandise, all funded by Phoenix. All while I, Ava, retained full creative and operational control. He had charts, projections, glossy brochures featuring smiling, successful, and probably fictional small business owners Phoenix had supposedly elevated to national prominence. It was intoxicating. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of, handed to me on a silver platter by the one man I should have run screaming from. Liam's final plea was desperate. Ava, please. It's a fantasy. It's a lie. It's Julian. Don't do this to us. Don't do this to Sophie. I told him he was being negative. I told him he needed to have more faith in me, in the possibility of redemption. The words taste like acid now. Julian, that master manipulator, even had an answer for my last flickering embers of caution. A trial period, he called it. A no obligation consulting phase. He'd come on board, unofficially, offer his expertise, make some introductions. Let me see the Phoenix Capital magic at work before I signed anything binding, before any real money changed hands. It sounded so reasonable, so safe. What did I have to lose? Only everything, apparently. So I did it. Against Liam's desperate warnings, against my own gut instinct that was screaming bloody murder, against every lesson my past should have taught me, I agreed. I agreed to let Julian Vance back into my business, back into my life. I signed the preliminary consulting agreement, a document so dense with corporate jargon and impenetrable clauses that it made my head spin. Julian just smiled his smooth, reassuring smile. Standard stuff, Ava. Just formalities. Protecting everyone's interests. Whose interest, Julian? Whose goddamn interests were you protecting? Certainly not mine. Liam's face when I told him, it wasn't anger anymore. It was a quiet, hollow kind of despair. The look of a man watching someone he loves willingly walk off a cliff. That was the moment. The precise, terrible moment I sealed our fate. The moment I didn't just invite the devil in for coffee, I handed him the keys to the whole goddamn shop, my home, my future, and now this flimsy piece of paper telling me I'm about to lose it all. The silence from Liam is a roaring accusation, and the only sound louder is the frantic, terrified beating of my own stupid, stupid heart. Chapter 2, Sweet Deception, Widening Cracks. The silence Liam left behind in our Portland apartment was a different kind. Not the heavy, accusatory silence of that morning at the kitchen table, staring at the eviction notice. To number. This was a hollow, echoing silence, the kind that screams of absence, of choices made and bridges burned. Sophie's little drawings were still taped to the fridge, her favorite stuffed bunny abandoned on the sofa. He'd taken her to his parents' place in Bend for a few days, he'd said. A few days to give us both some space. Space, right, more like a chasm, one I dug with my own damn stupidity. And Julian? Julian was of course a pillar of sympathetic understanding. Oh, Ava, I'm so sorry to hear about you and Liam, he'd cooed, his voice dripping with counterfeit concern when I'd tearfully, foolishly confided in him. These things happen. Starting a new venture, the stress, it can be tough on a marriage. But don't you worry, he'd added, patting my hand with a touch that now made my skin crawl. We're going to make the morning grind such a massive success, he'll come around. They always do when the money starts rolling in. The money. Always the goddamn money with him. And for a little while, a horribly deceptive little while, it seemed like the money might actually be rolling in. Or at least, trickling. Julian, in his new role as strategic consultant, a title he bestowed upon himself with much fanfare, was a whirlwind of apparent activity. He negotiated new deals with coffee bean suppliers, ethically sourced, single origin, direct trade, Ava, the works, which admittedly did taste incredible, though the invoices that followed were eye-wateringly complex and slightly higher than our previous simpler arrangements. He overhauled our social media presence, bringing in a dynamic young team from Phoenix Capital's marketing division. 3 unpaid interns. I later discovered Apu, who filled our Instagram feed with artfully filtered lattes and an endless stream of vapid, buzzword-laden captions. We even got a couple of glowing write-ups on some local Portland food blogs praising the morning grind's bold new direction and visionary leadership. Small potatoes, really, but to me, starved for any validation of my disastrous decision, they felt like major triumphs. See? I'd wanted to say to Liam, if he'd still been around to see them. I'm not a fool. This is working! But Liam was still in Bend, his calls becoming shorter, his voice more strained. Julian, meanwhile, was solidifying his position, brick by insidious brick. Ava, darling, he'd say, his voice like warm molasses. This old accounting system you're using, it's archaic, quaint, but entirely unsuitable for a business poised for explosive growth. Phoenix Capital has a proprietary platform, state-of-the-art, cloud-based, fully integrated. It'll streamline everything, give us real-time analytics, essential for attracting serious investors. I, still basking in the reflected glow of those blog reviews and a slight uptick in Saturday morning sales, readily agreed. What did I know about accounting software? He was the expert, the man with the MBA and the access to Phoenix Capital's state-of-the-art everything. The new system was installed. It was incredibly complex, so complex in fact that I could barely make heads or tails of it. Julian naturally volunteered to handle the financial oversight personally for the time being, to ensure a smooth transition and minimize any burden on me. You just focus on what you do best, Ava, he'd purred, creating that amazing coffee and that wonderful atmosphere. Leave the boring numbers to me, like a lamb to the slaughter. A stupid, trusting, ego-driven lamb. Then came the first, real, undeniable crack in Julian's carefully constructed facade, a crack I, in my willful blindness, managed to paper over. Martha, our bookkeeper, a kind, matronly woman who had been with the morning grind since day one, who had celebrated our small victories and patiently guided me through the labyrinth of quarterly tax filings, suddenly, inexplicably, resigned. She gave 2 weeks' notice, her eyes downcast, her explanation vague and unconvincing, personal reasons, needing a change. It didn't make sense. Martha loved her job. She loved the shop. She was more like family than an employee. I pressed her, gently at first, then with a growing sense of unease. Finally, her composure crumbled. Ava, she'd whispered, her voice trembling, her gaze darting nervously towards the small office Julian had commandeered for himself. I can't work like this. With him. She wouldn't elaborate, just shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. He asked me to do things, to change things in the books, things that weren't right. I can't. I won't. Before I could question her further, she'd fled, leaving me stunned and deeply unsettled. When I confronted Julian, he was the picture of concerned bewilderment. Martha? Resigning? Good heavens, why? She seemed perfectly happy. Perhaps, he mused, tapping his chin thoughtfully. The new software was a bit too advanced for her. Some people are resistant to change, you know. Unfortunate, but perhaps it's for the best. We need a team that's fully on board with our aggressive growth strategy. He then, with remarkable alacrity, just happened to know a brilliant young CPA, a real whiz kid, fresh out of Phoenix Capital's intensive training program, who could step in immediately. And I, fool, that I was desperate to believe that Martha was the problem. Not Julian, not my decision, let him. I let him replace a woman of unimpeachable integrity with one of his own. The fox wasn't just in the henhouse anymore, he was redesigning the damn security system. With Martha gone, and the whiz kid CPA, who I later learned was Julian's 22-year-old nephew, whose only prior accounting experience was balancing his own checkbook, badly now. Handling the books under Julian's direct supervision, Julian's control over the financial heart of the morning grind became absolute. He started holding strategic planning sessions with potential investors and banking partners, meetings I was rarely invited to, or only informed of at the last possible minute. Just preliminary discussions, Ava, he'd say, waving off my tentative inquiries. Boring financial stuff, due diligence, I don't want to bog you down with the minutia. You're the creative genius, the face of the brand. I'm just the numbers guy, working behind the scenes to make your dreams a reality. My dreams? He had the audacity to talk about my dreams while he was systematically hijacking them, twisting them into his own nightmare. But I didn't see it. Or rather, I chose not to see it. The lure of success, the intoxicating promise of expansion, the desperate need to prove Liam wrong had become a blinding, deafening obsession. Then came the big news, the breakthrough we'd supposedly been working towards. Julian burst into the shop one afternoon, his face flushed with excitement, waving a sheaf of official-looking documents. Ava, we did it! Phoenix Capital Ventures, they're in! The board just gave preliminary approval for a 7-figure investment package. We're gonna be huge. He actually lifted me off my feet in a hug that felt cloying, suffocating. 7 figures. The number swam dizzily before my eyes. It was more money than I could comprehend. But there were, of course, conditions. Just a few formalities, Ava. Standard procedure for an investment of this magnitude, Julian explained, spreading the documents across my small, cluttered office desk. Phoenix Capital requires a full corporate restructuring. The morning grind needs to become TMG Corporation, a properly registered corp. We need audited financials, a more robust capital base, to demonstrate our seriousness, our stability. It's all about managing risk and maximizing shareholder value. Shareholder value? I was a sole proprietor who just wanted to make good coffee and pay my bills on time. He presented me with a mountain of paperwork, dense with impenetrable legal and financial jargon. My legal team at Phoenix has already drafted everything, Ava, to save you the expense and hassle, he said smoothly. It's all standard stuff, just formalizing our partnership, setting up the new corporate entity, paving the way for the capital injection. He pointed to various signature lines, his expensive pen hovering. This one establishes the new board, you, me, and a representative from Phoenix. This one authorizes me to act as CFO during the transition, to handle the bank negotiations and the initial fund transfers. This one, he paused, his finger resting on a particularly dense paragraph, is just a standard personal guarantee. Phoenix requires it from all principal owners in a new venture of this scale. Just a formality, really. Shows your commitment. It links some of your personal assets temporarily as collateral while we secure the main credit lines. Once the Phoenix investment is finalized and the new corporate credit is established, it all gets released, clean as a whistle. Personal assets? My blood ran cold. Julian. I began a knot of genuine fear tightening in my chest. I don't know about this. Collateral? My personal assets? What exactly are we talking about? He smiled, that damnably reassuring, utterly disarming smile. Ava, he chuckled like I was a slightly dim-witted but adorable child. It's just a temporary measure, standard practice. We're talking about a significant investment here. The fund needs to see that you're all in, that you have skin in the game too. It's mostly a paper exercise. The real security will be the business itself, once we're capitalized. Trust me on this, okay? I've done this 100 times. This is how big deals get done. Liam. I should have called Liam. I should have screamed for Liam. But Liam was in Bend, 1,000 miles away, emotionally if not geographically. And my pride, my stupid, stubborn, ruinous pride, wouldn't let me admit, not even to myself, that I was in over my head, that I was terrified, that I had made a catastrophic mistake. So, I listened to Julian's smooth, confident explanations. I let him walk me through the highlighted sections, his voice a soothing, authoritative drone. I let him downplay the risks, magnify the rewards. I let him convince me that this was it. This was my one big shot. And if I hesitated, if I let fear hold me back, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. And so, with a hand that trembled almost as much as it had that morning with the eviction notice, I signed. I signed away my business. I signed away my financial security. I signed away, though I didn't fully comprehend it at the time, a significant portion of my future. And Liam's and Sophie's, I signed everything Julian put in front of me. That night, Liam called. His voice was flat, devoid of its usual warmth. He'd heard, through the Portland Grapevine, a surprisingly efficient network when it came to local business gossip, that I was making some big moves with the morning grind. He didn't sound impressed. He sounded resigned. I tried to explain, to convey the excitement, the sheer scale of the Phoenix Capital deal, the incredible future Julian was painting. I told him about the corporate restructuring, about the new credit lines, even shamefully about the personal guarantee, trying to spin it as a sign of my unwavering commitment, my entrepreneurial courage. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Then, Liam's voice, when it finally came, was colder, harder than I had ever heard it. Ava, he said, each word a chip of ice. You signed a personal guarantee. You put our home, the home our daughter sleeps in, up as collateral for that snake's promises. I tried to interject to explain Julian's reassurances, the temporary nature of it all. He cut me off. No, Ava, I don't want to hear it. I warned you. I begged you. And you chose him. You chose this fantasy over your family, over common sense. I can't do this anymore. I can't just stand by and watch you self-destruct and take us all down with you. His voice cracked then, just for a moment, revealing the raw pain beneath the anger. I'm staying in bed with Sophie for a while longer, Ava, indefinitely, until you come to your senses, or until there's nothing left to save. I honestly don't know which will come first anymore. And then he hung up, just like that. The dial tone buzzed in my ear, a flat, final sound that echoed the sudden terrifying emptiness in my chest. He was gone. Liam was really, truly gone. And Sophie, my God, Sophie. The grand signing gala and investment announcement party for TMG Corporation, the soulless new acronym for the morning grind, was held a week later at one of Portland's most exclusive, ridiculously overpriced downtown hotels. Julian, naturally, had insisted on it. We need to make a splash, Ava, announce our arrival to the Portland business community in style. He'd spared no expense, champagne flowed like water, a string quartet played Vivaldi in the corner, a veritable army of cater waiters circulated with tiny, unidentifiable canapes. I felt like an imposter, a fraud in a borrowed dress, a hollow smile plastered on my face as Julian, beaming like a proud father, introduced me to a parade of key stakeholders, industry leaders, and potential future franchisees. All I suspected, either paid actors or clueless associates of his, roped into the charade. The guest of honor, the man of the hour, was, of course, Mr. Sterling, the distinguished, silver-haired, utterly convincing, and utterly fake chairman of Phoenix Capital Ventures. He delivered a smooth, eloquent speech full of praise for my entrepreneurial spirit and the Morning Grind's unique market position, and pontificated at length about Phoenix Capital's unwavering commitment to fostering local talent and innovative small businesses. It was all a beautifully orchestrated, incredibly expensive lie, and I stood there, beside Julian, beside Mr. Sterling, nodding and smiling like a damn puppet, while my life, my marriage, my business, my entire future was being systematically, expertly, and with my own stupid, willing complicity, dismantled piece by devastating piece. The champagne tasted like ashes in my mouth. The champagne flute felt cold and heavy in my trembling hand, a stark contrast to the false, overheated gaiety of Julian's grand signing gala. Even as Mr. Sterling droned on about synergy and shareholder value, a knot of pure, unadulterated dread was tightening in my stomach. Liam's words, his pained, final-sounding words from that last phone call, echoed in my ears, louder than the string quartet, more insistent than Julian's smug pronouncements, until there's nothing left to save. The party, this whole elaborate charade, felt less like a celebration of a new beginning and more like a lavish, obscenely expensive funeral for everything I held dear. And I was the guest of honor, the chief mourner, the fool who had willingly supplied the coffin and dug the grave. The hangover I woke up with the next morning was nothing compared to the brutal, sobering reality that crashed down upon me with the force of a tsunami in the days that followed. It started with a phone call from our main dairy supplier, his usually jovial voice tight with uncharacteristic anger, demanding immediate payment for 3 months of overdue invoices. I knew nothing about invoices Julian had sworn he'd taken care of. Then came a similar call from our coffee bean roaster, then the bakery that supplied our pastries, then the linen service. It was a cascade, an avalanche of demands for payments on accounts Julian had supposedly been managing, accounts he had assured me were all current, all perfectly in order. My frantic calls to Julian went straight to voicemail, his previously ubiquitous presence suddenly, suspiciously absent. The state-of-the-art, cloud-based, fully integrated accounting software he'd insisted we install was now a locked black box, my access codes mysteriously, conveniently, no longer valid. Then the bank dropped the real bombshell. A curt, official-looking letter arrived by registered mail informing TMG Corporation and me, Ava Miller, as personal guarantor that due to multiple, significant, and unexplained irregularities in our recent financial activities and several critically defaulted loan payments, our primary business accounts were being frozen effective immediately. Frozen? The word hung in the air of my small, suddenly very cold office at the Morning Grind like a death sentence. And attached to that letter, like a cruel mocking addendum, was a demand for immediate repayment of a bridge loan, a staggering 6-figure sum I had no recollection of ever authorizing, a loan secured, I now saw with a dawning, sickening horror by the very personal guarantee Julian had so casually dismissed as a mere formality. A loan that was now irrevocably tied to our family home, the home. Liam and I had poured our hearts and souls into the home. Sophie had taken her first steps in. Our home. That was when the first real tendril of icy panic, the kind that steals your breath and turns your blood to slush, began to creep into my soul. This wasn't just bad business anymore. This was something far darker, far more personal, far more destructive. And as if on cue, as if orchestrated by some malevolent, unseen hand, the online attacks began. It started subtly, a few unusually negative Yelp reviews, a snarky comment on our Instagram page, then it escalated, rapidly, viciously. Suddenly, the Morning Grind was a cesspool of alleged horrors. Stories of stale coffee and surly staff, accusations of dirty bathrooms and rodent sightings, even a horrifying, entirely fabricated, and deeply damaging anonymous post on a local Portland parenting forum claiming a child had suffered a severe allergic reaction due to cross-contamination and negligent food handling practices at our shop. Photos appeared grainy, out of focus, but undeniably damaging, purporting to show unsanitary conditions behind our counter. A dead cockroach near the pastry case, a cockroach I would later learn, through means I'll get to, had been planted there. Our Google rating plummeted overnight. Our Facebook page was flooded with one-star reviews and angry, abusive comments. Loyal, long-time customers, people I knew by name, people whose daily coffee orders I had memorized, started looking at me with suspicion, with pity, then simply stopped coming in altogether. Mrs. Gable, our sharp-tongued but fiercely loyal elderly regular, the one who always ordered a half-cap soy latte with exactly 1.5 packets of Splenda, even she stopped her daily visits, her usual corner table conspicuously, painfully empty. The vibrant, welcoming heart of the morning grind was flatlining, dying a slow, public, and agonizingly humiliating death by 1,000 digital cuts. When I finally, after 2 days of increasingly frantic, unanswered calls and texts, managed to corner Julian as he was brazenly, casually exiting my office at the shop, his expensive briefcase in hand, he didn't even have the decency to look surprised, let alone concerned. His face, once a carefully constructed mask of earnest empathy and solicitous charm, was now cold, smooth, and utterly devoid of any recognizable human emotion. It was the face of a shark that had just scented blood in the water. "Ava," he said, his voice a cool, dismissive drawl. "Unfortunate business, all this, truly." It seems Phoenix Capital's due diligence uncovered some, shall we say, rather alarming inconsistencies in the morning grind's operational stability and long-term financial viability. Coupled with this sudden, rather dramatic downturn in your public reputation, he let the sentence hang, a smug, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. The board convened an emergency meeting last night. I'm afraid, Ava, they voted to formally withdraw their offer of investment. Effective immediately. A great pity, of course. We had such high hopes. My legs felt like they were about to buckle. Withdraw? Julian, what are you talking about? The irregularities? The downturn? You caused this. This is your doing, I practically shrieked, my voice raw with disbelief and a dawning terrifying understanding of the abyss I was staring into. He merely raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "My dear Ava," he said, his tone dripping with a condescending pity that made my blood boil, "accusations are so unbecoming and entirely unproductive. The fact is, the business is clearly failing, rapidly. You're facing multiple lawsuits, I hear. A complete lie, but one designed to terrify me further. And the bank is, shall we say, less than pleased. Frankly, you're insolvent." He paused, then delivered the killing blow with the casual indifference of a man swatting a fly. However, because of my residual affection for you and my desire to see you salvage something from this unfortunate mess, I've managed to pull a few strings. I found another very discreet private investor who, as a personal favor to me, might be willing to take the morning grind off your hands. For a nominal sum, of course, pennies on the dollar, realistically. But it would absolve you of the outstanding debts, allow you to walk away relatively clean. It's your only viable option, Ava. Your only way out of this. Think of it as my final act of friendship. He even had the gall to smile then, a tight, predatory, utterly soulless smile. And in that moment, the last fragile vestiges of my denial, my hope, my idiotic belief in second chances, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. I wasn't just looking at Julian Vance, the charming rogue from my past. I was looking at pure, unadulterated, premeditated evil. He hadn't come back to make amends. He'd come back to finish the job he'd started all those years ago. To utterly, completely, and irrevocably destroy me. The days that followed were a blur of despair, of frantic, useless phone calls to the bank, to unresponsive suppliers, to a parade of increasingly unsympathetic lawyers who all told me, in varying degrees of politeness, that my situation was dire, that the documents I'd signed were ironclad, that Julian had covered his tracks with infuriating, almost diabolical precision. I was drowning, alone, in a sea of debt and public disgrace. And then, when I had truly, finally hit rock bottom, when the thought of simply walking away, of letting Julian win, of just disappearing seemed like the only sane option left, Liam came back. He walked into our dark, silent apartment, late one rainy Portland night, looking tired, older, but with a new, quiet determination in his eyes. He didn't say, "I told you so," though God knows he had every right. He just held me for a long, long time as I sobbed out the whole sordid, humiliating story, the full, devastating extent of Julian's betrayal and my own catastrophic foolishness. And when I was done, when the tears finally subsided into ragged, hiccuping gasps, he didn't offer recriminations, only a single, quiet, fiercely protective sentence. "Okay, Ava, we fight him. We fight this bastard, and we get our life back." And in that moment, something shifted. A tiny, flickering ember of defiance, of hope, ignited in the desolate wasteland of my despair. Liam, it turned out, hadn't been entirely idle during his self-imposed exile in Bend. His initial anger and disappointment had, with time and distance, morphed into a gnawing, persistent worry, a deep-seated unease about what Julian might truly be capable of. He'd reached out to Michael, his old college roommate, now a sharp, tenacious, and surprisingly successful corporate lawyer in Seattle. He laid out his suspicions, his fears, and Michael, intrigued by the sheer audacity of Julian's apparent long con, and perhaps sensing a challenging, high-profile case, had agreed to start doing some discreet, preliminary digging into Julian Vance and the mysterious Phoenix Capital Ventures. What Michael had begun to uncover, even before the full extent of Julian's treachery against me had become clear, was a shadowy pattern of similar, smaller-scale deceptions of shell corporations and vanishing investors, a trail of financial breadcrumbs that hinted at a far more sophisticated and long-running operation than either of us could have imagined. "It's not much yet, Ava," Liam had said, showing me the initial, sparse file Michael had compiled. "But it's a start. Michael thinks this guy, Julian, he's a professional, a predator. And Phoenix Capital is almost certainly a complete fabrication, a front for his scams. The fight we knew would be monumental, an uphill battle against a cunning, ruthless, and well-prepared adversary. But now, at least, I wasn't fighting alone. The next few weeks were a frantic, desperate race against time. Julian, through his lawyers, was pressing hard for the quick sale of the morning grind to his anonymous savior investor, citing the mounting debts and the rapidly deteriorating public image as reasons for urgent action. He was trying to corner me, to force my hand before we could gather enough ammunition to fight back effectively. Ava, Liam, and Michael worked around the clock. We painstakingly reconstructed the timeline of Julian's involvement, sifting through every email, every financial statement, the few I still had access to, every casual remark I could remember him making. We reached out to former employees, particularly Martha, the bookkeeper Julian had forced out. Martha, initially terrified of repercussions, finally agreed to provide a sworn affidavit detailing Julian's attempts to coerce her into falsifying financial records and his suspicious, secretive behavior. Then came the unexpected, almost miraculous breakthrough. Mrs. Gable, our elderly, sharp-witted former regular, the one with the complicated soy latte order, contacted me. She'd read about the Morning Grind's troubles in a local community newsletter and was, in her own words, madder than a wet hen. She said she'd always had a bad feeling about Julian, that he was too smooth by half. And then she dropped the bombshell. Mrs. Gable, it turned out, was a devoted, if somewhat eccentric, amateur archivist of her daily life. She had a peculiar habit of occasionally, discreetly, making short audio recordings on her old smartphone just to help her remember important conversations, she'd explained with a twinkle in her eye. And she had, purely by chance, recorded a significant portion of a hushed, intense phone call Julian had taken at a nearby table in the coffee shop several weeks prior, a call where he had sounded, according to Mrs. Gable, nothing like the charming Mr. Vance everyone else saw, but rather cold, calculating, and downright menacing. In the muffled but chillingly clear recording, Julian could be heard discussing, with an unnamed party, the final stages of the asset acquisition, the controlled demolition of the target's reputation, and most damningly, the importance of ensuring the primary owner is too financially and emotionally crippled to mount any effective legal resistance. He even with a cold chuckle referred to me as the surprisingly resilient but ultimately naive little songbird about to have her wings well and truly clipped. The recording was pure, unadulterated gold. It was the smoking gun we so desperately needed. Armed with Martha's affidavit, Mrs. Gable's astonishing recording, and Michael's rapidly expanding file on Julian's network of shell companies and past questionable dealings, we decided it was time to spring our trap. Ava, feigning complete financial desperation and emotional collapse, agreed to Julian's demand for a final unconditional meeting to sign over the morning grind to his anonymous Mr. Sterling and Phoenix Capital Ventures, which we now knew was just another name for Julian's personal slush fund. The meeting was set for a neutral, anonymous boardroom at a downtown law firm Julian's lawyers had booked. Julian arrived looking smug, triumphant, every inch the conquering hero. Mr. Sterling, who, as we suspected, turned out to be a slightly shabbier, less convincing version of Julian himself, sporting a bad toupee and a pair of non-prescription glasses, by his side, along with their smirking, overconfident legal counsel. They presented the final sale documents, a complete and utter capitulation on my part for a price that was frankly insulting. Julian leaned back in his chair, a predatory glint in his eyes. "Just sign here, Ava," he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "It's for the best. Time to cut your losses and move on." "Not so fast, Julian," Liam said, his voice calm, but carrying an unexpected authority as he, Michael, and I entered the boardroom unannounced. Julian's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of surprise, then annoyance. Mr. Sterling looked momentarily flustered. "What is the meaning of this intrusion?" Julian's lawyer blustered. Michael, cool as a cucumber, simply placed a thick, bound dossier on the polished mahogany table. "The meaning, gentlemen," Michael said, his voice like silk-wrapped steel, "is that this particular scam is over. We have evidence, substantial and irrefutable evidence, Miss Vance, of fraud, conspiracy, defamation, and a rather impressive string of what appears to be systematic financial elder abuse in at least 3 other states under various aliases. We have sworn affidavits from former employees you coerced, we have financial records a team of forensic accountants would find fascinating, and..." Michael paused, allowing himself a small, almost imperceptible smile as he held up a small digital audio player. "We have this rather enlightening recording of you, Mr. Vance, detailing your plans to financially and emotionally cripple my client. I believe the term you used was clipping the songbird's wings." He pressed play. Julian's recorded voice, cold, arrogant, and utterly damning, filled the suddenly silent boardroom. The color drained from Julian's face. Mr. Sterling began to sweat profusely, his cheap toupee askew. Their lawyer looked like he'd just swallowed a very large, very poisonous toad. And just as Julian opened his mouth to bluster, to deny, to perhaps try and charm his way out of this one last time, the boardroom doors opened again, and 2 uniformed Portland Police Department detectives, accompanied by a stern-faced FBI agent specializing in white-collar crime who Michael had, with remarkable foresight, already briefed, stepped purposefully into the room. "Julian Vance, aka Jonathan Sterling, aka Michael Thorne," one of the detectives said, his voice flat, official, and utterly devoid of any sympathy. "You are under arrest for multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and wire fraud. You have the right to remain silent." The aftermath was messy, protracted, and emotionally exhausting. Julian, it turned out, was even more prolific, more brazen, and more destructive a con artist than even Michael had initially suspected. The investigation widened, unearthing a tangled web of shell corporations, stolen identities, and a heartbreakingly long list of victims across multiple states, many of them elderly, vulnerable, or small business owners like myself, all lured in by his charm, his intelligence, and his empty promises of a brighter financial future. He and his few key accomplices, including the unfortunate Mr. Sterling, whose real name was Arthur Jenkins, a down-on-his-luck character actor Julian had roped into his schemes, faced a barrage of federal and state charges. The legal battles dragged on for nearly 2 years, but in the end, with the overwhelming weight of evidence, including our own meticulously documented case and Mrs. Gable's crucial recording, Julian Vance was convicted on multiple felony counts and sentenced to a significant and richly deserved term in federal prison. We never recovered all the money he'd stolen, not by a long shot. The damage to the Morning Grind's reputation, to my own professional standing, was immense and took years of hard work, transparency, and community outreach to even begin to repair. But we didn't lose our home. Thanks to Michael's brilliant legal maneuvering and the clear evidence of fraud, the personal guarantee I'd so foolishly signed was eventually nullified, the predatory loans voided. And the Morning Grind, battered and bruised but not entirely broken, survived. Liam and I, with the unwavering support of our true friends, our loyal, if initially diminished, customer base, and a renewed, hard-won appreciation for each other's strengths, and a much clearer understanding of our own vulnerabilities, slowly, painstakingly began to rebuild. We even eventually, with a new, much more cautious business plan and a loan from a community development bank that actually did believe in ethical investment, managed to open that second, smaller location, not as a monument to ambition, but as a quiet testament to resilience, to survival, and to the enduring power of a really, really good cup of coffee served with honesty and integrity. Our marriage, tested in the crucible of Julian's treachery, emerged stronger, deeper, and far more honest than it had ever been before. And I, Ava, finally, truly understood the devastating, life-altering cost of giving the wrong person a second chance. It was a lesson learned in the hardest, most painful way imaginable. A lesson etched not just in financial statements and legal documents, but in the very fabric of my soul. And it was a lesson I would carry with me, a constant, sobering reminder for the rest of my days. Julian Vance didn't just want my money, he wanted to break my spirit. He failed. And that, in the end, was a victory far sweeter, far more satisfying than any 7-figure investment could ever have been.